All right, so I don't know how many of you know of Ben Swann. He's got a social media. He's on social media. He's a journalist, and he has been on CNN, MSNBC, and uh, other places, and other platforms like that. But he's got a social media channel. You can just use his name, Ben Swann, uh, Swann. I believe that's how you spell his last name. Anyways, he's got a series called Truth and Media, and I actually like this guy. Um, Now he just put out a video. I haven't been able to look into it, but I wanted to do a video on it because I do trust what he reports. Uh, the stuff that he's reported on, I've actually done looked into myself. So I've done the actual research into the stuff that he reports, and besides a few semantic stuff, Ben is pretty much spot on, and it can be confirmed. So as I said, I haven't confirmed this, but check out his newest video release, uh, and it has to do with coronavirus. It has to do with coronavirus and how there are scientists in Australia and some other scientists who believe that the coronavirus that we are currently under a pandemic, is man-made and engineered to be more virulent, particularly to infecting humans. Um, so check that video out. It's stuff that I've alluded to before, and the other thing is actually one of the things that it gives more credence to is the claim by China that the virus was engineered uh, by the U.S. and uh, it was funded and engineered by the U.S. Um, and then there's Bill Gates, of course, and that council or foundation that he's involved with. So this actually gives more credence. Um, and knowing the history of the United States as well as Western Europe, I'm and the absolutely monstrous and colossally monstrous evils that the Western rulers, which now the United States is the top dog. Uh, I I can't ignore the truth that I can't ignore the truth. There's just too much evidence, and uh, it is a avalanche, a tsunami, a a uh, a world-ending uh, uh, meteor impact that destroys everything. That's the level of of evil that the Western rulers uh, have perpetrated for thousands of years. So I uh, I encourage people to check out Ben Swann's video. As I said, I haven't looked into it, but you have to be you have to be in complete and utter denial, complete and utter disinterest in in your own personal lives and the lives of your friends and family, not to put the pieces together and come to a conclusion. Is I'm almost 50 years old, and I've seen and heard too much evidence to deny it. And there were those. I've never been really. I was never really one to before to buy into this. What is just insane conspiracy theory that the ruling class wants to kill off as much of us as possible, because they believe that the billions and billions of us are consuming everything, and every action that they're doing is helping along to foster their beliefs, and so all their actions are megalomanically psychotic, and so everything. I mean, you have Dow Chemicals dumping a byproduct of Teflon. You got Monsanto creating a GMO crop that only their their uh, their herbicide can't touch. You have agricultural and animal factory farming, agricultural using way too much fertilizer and other nutrients, and then it's being all plowed, being dumped willy nilly, causing red tide, green algae, and all that other stuff, which is killing off fish and other marine life, and contaminating the bioecology in all our waterways, and it's seeping into the lands. You have the all the waste from the factory animal farming that's being dumped. Again, you have mountaintop removal for coal and other mining, which is just dumping and so then you have all that with the fossil fuels and extracting fossil fuels and sending up billions of metric tons of of uh, hydrocarbons. We have the deforestation going on. You just, if you're a thinking, conscious and conscientious person, you really can't deny it, and to ignore it is to say is to basically lie down and say, go ahead, you can do whatever. Um, I'm anyways, check out Ben Swann's newest video, Truth in Media. He's reporting on the coronavirus, and how it's the scientists are saying there is no way it's natural, that it has to be human engineered. Um, so check out that and think about it, and think about what I said about how all of this fits. That there may actually be legitimacy in the so-called conspiracy, which, if you are paying attention, if you actually look into it and you actually think about it, I think you'll come to realize that it's not conspiracy. It may not very well be conspiracy. It may actually be the end game. I mean, remember that during the rise of Nazi Germany, they were looking for a final solution to kill off all the Jews, and that's a known fact. Bayer was involved. Monsanto was involved in that. Um, uh, you know, uh, how and these companies are still around, and they did horribly evil things. Think of all these cancer centers that you constantly see on TV being advertised. Think of all the pharmaceuticals, and then think of all the class action lawsuits uh, for pharmaceuticals, over the counter and behind the counter, and how they're linked to cancer and others. I mean, Zantac. It's an over the counter thing that you can buy at your pharmacy. That was linked to causing cancers. Think of think of how you know some of the so-called uh, pharmaceutical drugs that, for uh, addressing depression and all this other stuff. Think of how they've been connected to having at the reverse, and those had class action lawsuit. That's why, like, I used to take a lot of stuff for my depression, so on and so forth. But one of the drugs I used to take was directly implicated for the exact effects that it had on me. That it was actually there was a direct connection when you were taking large doses of this stuff, that it would actually make you, like, like a 10 or 20 or 30 fold more likely to try to kill yourself. And I tried that because I was on that drug. Uh, so that's a personal thing that I myself experienced. And there's another one. I forget the drug, but that's I had this. I had another. I hit one of the the so-called side effects from that other drug, and then there was another one. It just That's why I stopped taking all those, because they were direct so-called side effects. Um, the the evidence is just way too strong. Yeah, you got the lead in pipes, and it's not just in Flint. And I've talked about this before, that it's all in 50 states, as well as the U.S. territories. But it's not just lead. There's arsenic. There's other heavy metals like cadmium, in large quantities, and how the EPA keeps making the acceptable levels higher and higher and higher, and how that's directly connected to how the corporations uh, push through lobbyists and through bribing politicians. We see all of this. how the mining for lithium and how it not only exploits people living elsewhere, but it also massively pollutes, as well as deforestation and everything else. Um this is why I constantly talk about that we must take forceful actions. That we must start viewing the Western and American corporations and that are international, and how we must view them and the big shareholders of those corporations who own businesses as well. Those and these people that get into hedge funds and uh, and and all this. How this We already know that the stock market doesn't represent the economic health. How GDP doesn't isn't relevant to the economic and financial health of the people. So how unemployment doesn't actually cover reality. How the numbers can be fudged and do so with all of this, and then the history that's coming out of how that racism is a systemic issue that happened that has happened since even before the foundation of the country, and how the police were basically slave patrols and or those to keep the minorities and the poor down, to keep them in their place, and how every ruling on this by the state Supreme Courts and the actual U.S. Supreme Court states that property is the number one objective of police, protection of property, and it's not property of the mom and pop operations or your corner store that's not owned by 7-Eleven or some other big chain, but property like Walmart, property like Gucci, property like all these Kohl's and so all these others. It's about the wealthy and those and the political bagmen and women who, well, no, I said I don't want to use man or woman. I want to use people. Uh, I don't consider them these people to be Terrans, sons and daughters of Gaia, the mother. I consider them to be predators, dangerous, life-threatening, life-threatening criminal predators. So take it as you will. Anyways, check out Ben Swann and his report on that, and try to actually think about it. If you watch me, you already know that a lot of what I say and what I talk about is truthful, factual reality. So, anyways, check it out, and because uh, this is it is just evil. It's just wrong. It's We need to take action, and we need to move on fast, and we because otherwise we're just taking a slow walk to the headsman axe.